There's so many reading programs out there. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. Getting our children to initially read is a very exciting thing, but there are a lot of components to the reading process, especially as they get farther into it, that you want to make sure that you don't overlook. So in today's video, I am going to be sharing some of the tried and true reading programs that I recommend often as a homeschooling mom of 10 years. My name is Megan, and if you're new here, I am so glad that you're here. And as I mentioned, this is our 10th year of homeschooling. Before that, I was actually a public school teacher. It has been very interesting teaching each one of them to read. Some were quicker to the process, some were pretty right on target, and some actually have a learning disability dealing with reading. And so if you have a child with dyslexia or suspect it, I will put a link to a couple of videos that I have done about that down in the description. But let's get into the purpose of this video. As I mentioned in the beginning, the reading process is such an important part of a child's life and of our homeschool. It is through reading that not only do we grow deeper in our knowledge in other subjects, but for us, it's an important process to be able to do because of our faith and being able to read God's Word. Now, I am going to focus on 3 different tried and true reading programs that I have found very effective in our home with all of my children. Now, granted, my youngest is not actually school age yet, but I will definitely be using one or some of the things that I mentioned in this video. So let's get into it. Okay, so I am actually going to start with one that a lot of people actually use as a supplement in their homeschool. This is a pretty popular one that you will see people share about as, like I said, a supplement, like independent work. This is Explode the Code, which is a phonics mastery program. And what a lot of people don't realize about Explode the Code, because we use it mainly as a supplement as well, whatever they're doing as a reading curriculum, I will buy them a book that kind of goes along with those levels. And they will also complete this as kind of independent work alongside of that. That's how most people use this. However, what a lot of people don't realize is that you can actually buy the teacher book that goes with Explode the Code. Now, what does this book do? A lot of people overlook it because, again, like I said, it's used as a supplement a lot of times. And I just don't think people realize the depth that this program actually goes. So in this teacher guide, it is going to give you all kinds of added activities you can do to turn this into a whole reading program for your child. So if this is something that you want to look farther into, I would suggest that you do so. I do not use it though as like the only reading program. I do use the Get Ready for the Code series, and I will get into that here in just a second. But if you want to use this as a reading program, lesson 1, for example, it has some different added materials that you can use alongside it to make it that full reading program. But you are going to do some reviewing of consonants. You are also going to work on phonemic awareness. So you're going to work on blending. The next thing that you do is you introduce a specific skill that you're working on. In this case, it is short A sound. You have some new vocabulary and sight words. It even introduces sight words in here. And then it tells you what student pages to complete. There's also some different ideas for working on fluency, comprehension, writing. And then there's even some suggestions for differentiating your instruction for a child who is a more kinesthetic style learner. As you can see, if you were to use this the way that it is written with this teacher guide, then that's a pretty thorough program actually if you just follow the guide. So if that is something that's intriguing to you, I would suggest that you would check that out because we love Explode the Code. This is especially, I use it with all of my children, but it has especially been helpful for reinforcing the phonics mastery with my child who does have dyslexia, and we use it again as that supplement alongside whatever reading program that we are using. Now, as I mentioned, there is another series. I don't have the workbooks because they are all used up. There is another series that is Get Ready, Get Set, and Go for the Code. This is going to teach the basis of phonics. It's going to solidify those letter sounds for your child. I used this with my daughter last year. Technically by age, she should have been in kindergarten, but we actually did an extended preschool for her. And so this is actually what I used. It gave her a wonderful basis. This is a wonderful tool to use for preschool, early kindergarten. Now, moving on to the next program. These are full programs for reading, and one you're probably going to be very familiar with, one you might not know as well. I have done videos on both of these in the past, but the first one that I want to talk about is Learning to Read from Christian Light Education. Now, this is the teacher book. As you can see, it looks very school-ish with having a big, thick teacher guide like this. It is a curriculum that was originally written to use in schools. However, it is kind of your, quote, old school way of learning to read, and I think there's a lot of value in that. So with this program, your student pages are in what is called light units, and there are 10 of them that they will work through as they go through this program. This program is actually not recommended until first grade. So if you're wanting to really solidify their understanding of the different sounds of the letters, all that good phonemic awareness and stuff, maybe start like with this, like we did, and then once that is solidified, move into learning to read. Now, in this program, you may think, oh, this is starting out kind of slow. It's really not. You start working on sight words within the first unit of this program, and it does ramp up pretty quickly as you get farther into it, but never once does it feel overwhelming as long as your child is ready for this curriculum. Along with the teacher guide and the student workbooks, you also have sight word cards. This is an example of some of those sight word cards. All the sight words, they call them star words, and they are underlined so that it kind of helps trigger in their minds that they are those star words or sight words, whatever you want to call it. There are also the letter cards, and each letter card also has a little rhyme on the back that goes along with the story in the curriculum. And there are a bunch of these. There are like blends, there are long vowels, short vowels, all the things. So one thing I didn't get out to show you guys is something we're not to yet, because I'm currently using this with my daughter, is you also have the phrase cards, which are similar in how they look to these. They're just longer, and they have different phrases that they begin reading using those flashcards. So this program is very comprehensive. I love this. I feel like this is a reading program that is not going to allow there to be any gaps or holes, because it is a whole reading program. And just because it is, like I said, written originally for a classroom, but it is very easily done with just a child one-on-one. In fact, I think it honestly works better that way because your child is getting all the attention. Now, this is also a program that if you have a more reluctant reader, you can use this in second grade. First grade, second grade, if you have a more reluctant reader, it's excellent. Like I said, it's comprehensive and thorough. I've used it with 2 of my children and used part of it with my child who does have dyslexia. In fact, this was one of the only regular reading programs that worked for him in some way. But the next one I'm going to share with you actually worked beautifully for him. Okay, so this next reading program is one that I'm sure you have heard of, and it has worked very well for us. I have used it with 2 of my children so far, and that is All About reading. Now, like I said, this is a pretty popular one. A lot of times when we hear about All About Reading, we automatically think that maybe it is for a child who has a learning disability in reading or is reluctant in their reading or has dyslexia, whatever it may be. And that is not actually the only children that you can use it for. So this is just a great reading program, especially if you have an early reader, because it is multi-sensory. And when you have a younger child learning to read, what better idea than to use a program that is a bit multi-sensory? So in the future, when my 4-year-old son starts learning to read, I actually am not going to use learning to read with him because he is very kinesthetic. I am going to use All About Reading with him. So in All About Reading, you are going to work on skills like phonological awareness, phonics, and decoding. You're going to work on vocabulary and fluency, and of course, reading comprehension. So this is a multi-sensory program, which means that you are involving more than one sense to learn the reading process and to refine the reading process. So in this curriculum, you will use letter tiles, whether that be on a whiteboard with magnetic letters, which we do have that, but we also do have the Letter Tiles app. But what I love about this is it takes the task of learning to read and put some play into it. And I think this is especially wonderful for young children who maybe aren't the ones who are going to want to sit down and do a worksheet. That's what makes All About Reading so great. It is also an Orton-Gillingham method, so if you do have a child who's a little more reluctant or who is showing early signs of dyslexia, then this is a program that should work well for them because of that reason. None of the student pages are written. In fact, your student pages are either going to be pages like this that they're going to practice reading through based on whatever phonics skill they're learning, or you're going to have some different little games to play, like this one, for example. This particular one comes with pieces to a racetrack. So this is your starting line. Here is your race car. Right now it's flat, but you fold it up like this. And then you build the track for your race car based on reading the words that go along with your lesson for the day. And as you can see here, you are working on the sound using UR. This is level 3 that this is in. Here's another one, urgent. And so your child will kind of make a game out of it where they are building the racetrack for their race car by reading the words that work specifically, that reinforce specifically whatever phonics skill that you are working on for that day in this reading program. I think the other strong point of this is the fact that they recommend doing these reading lessons, the active reading lessons, for about 20 minutes a day. Now, that doesn't include the added on read aloud time. They do encourage them to read an additional 15 to 20 minutes afterward or at some point in the day. However, the actual time spent actively learning to read is only 20 minutes. Now, we have stretched that some. If we are close to finishing a lesson, then we'll go ahead and push it and finish it out. That is for your discernment. But there may be a lesson that your child is struggling a bit with, and this gives the opportunity for them to stop in the middle of the lesson for the day, come back to it the next day to review the concept and hopefully master it at that point. Now, I will say this confidently. There has never been a lesson that we didn't master or come close to complete mastery on in this curriculum. With my son specifically who has dyslexia, this has worked beautifully for him once we were able to transition over to this. And I don't just use it for that child. I've used it with another one of my kiddos, and it works beautifully for him as well. So the incentive to this is, number one, it's that multisensory aspect. But number two, what I love is that it's not a consumable product. So what I do is, many people use a binder system to organize theirs. For me personally, I did that the first time that I used it, and then I actually switched over to buying these giant plastic envelopes, and I keep everything that I need in these envelopes by chunks of lessons. So this one's lesson 21 through 25. That way I can reuse this curriculum with another child. And I love that aspect of things because reading programs can be a bit pricey, especially for one that is pretty thorough. But in this case, I'm not having to rebuy anything for this program. Whereas other reading programs, you may have to buy things like workbooks or student sheets or something like that. This, I can just pull out and go and teach another child to read with this program. So that's another plus to this is, yes, it's pricey on the front end, but when you think about using it with more than one child, it's actually not. So I would say that's a pretty huge plus to using this program. But I also do, as I said, love learning to read, and I love Explode the Code. So all three of these are my absolute favorites. As I mentioned, I have used some other things, and there's a few things that I have liked pretty well, but they are not my tried and trues. These are the consistent three that I always recommend to people when they are looking for a curriculum to teach their child to read. I constantly come back to these three, and I love that each one of them works for whatever your child needs. So if you have that more hands-on kinesthetic learner or a reluctant reader or whatever it may be, then I think All About Reading is an excellent fit. If you have a child who loves worksheets, which my daughter that's doing it now, she loves that. She loves that curriculum. And so she uses learning to read. And then, of course, with Explode the Code, whether you use it supplementally or as a really budget-friendly option to a reading program in your homeschool, I think you're sure to have success with any of these. But all in all, I just want you to remember, more than anything in the world, whatever you choose, consistency is key in teaching your child to read. So with that said, I hope that you guys found this video helpful. I would love to know down in the comments, what do you use? If you have any questions, or what have you used? What is your favorite program to teach your child to read? So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you on future videos. Thanks so much, guys, and have a blessed day.